When someone goes quiet on you, do you actually know what they're doing? Yes, it seems harmless. Maybe they're just tired. Maybe they've got a lot on their mind. That's what most people tell themselves. But here's the thing, that silence? It is not always what it looks like. Behind some people's quiet, there is a game running. A calculated, deliberate power play most people completely miss because it is dressed up as nothing. And if you misunderstand it, which most people do, you could spend weeks, even months, apologizing for things you never did, shrinking yourself for someone who was never upset in the first place. They were just watching to see what you would do. We are going to break down all 7 signs someone is running a silent game on you. And by the way, there is one sign at the end of this list that most people only recognize when it is way too late. We will get into that. But first, let us start with the sign hiding right at the beginning. Point 1. Destroy the obvious explanation. So why does someone go quiet on you? Most people assume it is simple. They are just angry, or they need space to cool down. End of story. Maybe they are introverted. Maybe they just are not a big talker. Fine, that makes sense. But here is the thing. If someone just needed space, they would not track how you respond to the silence. They would not clock whether you texted first, or how many times you called, or whether you looked nervous when they walked past you. They would just take their space and come back. But someone running a silent game? They are watching. They are studying your every move while pretending not to be there at all. Researchers studying ostracism found that being ignored activates the same region of the brain that processes physical pain. The dorsal anterior cingulate cortex lights up. Think about that for a second. Silence actually hurts, the same way a punch does. And someone who knows that, and uses it anyway, is not just quiet. They are strategic. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by things, but by our judgments about things. The silent game works because you make a judgment the moment the silence starts. You start asking, what did I do? What is wrong? How do I fix this? And none of those questions help you. They help them. And by the way, there is one specific moment when this game hits its hardest. We will get into that at the end, because what happens when someone who was silent suddenly comes back is something everyone needs to understand. Point 2. The hidden mechanism. Have you ever noticed that right after a period of silence, they come back unusually warm? They act like nothing happened, they smile, they talk to you normally. Maybe they even do something nice for you. And suddenly, you feel relieved, like whatever tension existed just dissolved. That is not random. That is intermittent reinforcement. Here is what most people do not realize. When someone gives you the cold shoulder and then pulls you back in with warmth, they are not just running hot and cold, they are conditioning you. Every cycle of withdrawal, followed by warmth, teaches your nervous system to crave the return. You stop asking why they went quiet, you just start chasing the version of them that came back. Researchers studying behavioral conditioning found that unpredictable rewards create far stronger psychological attachment than consistent ones. A slot machine pays out less than a steady salary, but people cannot stop pulling the lever. That is exactly what intermittent reinforcement does inside a relationship. The silence is the loss, the return is the payout, and you keep showing up for the game. This is also why you might find yourself being more careful around this person over time. You become quieter yourself, you pre-edit everything you say, you stop bringing up things that might trigger another round of silence. And you do all of that without anyone telling you to. Point 3. The power and status angle. Ever wonder why people in positions of power use silence so deliberately? Maybe it is the executive who never responds to emails right away, even when they have seen them. Maybe it is the person in the group who always waits for others to come to them. Maybe it is the partner who stops engaging the moment a conversation does not go their way. That pattern is not random, it is strategic. Here is something that might surprise you. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals that the object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. And one of the clearest forms of insanity he studied was the way people hand over their peace to those who say nothing. The emperor understood that the person who does not react, who does not explain, who simply withdraws, holds enormous social gravity. Watch how they use silence in real time. If they go quiet after you ask a direct question, they are testing whether you will fill the gap with something that benefits them. If they go quiet after a compliment or a gesture, they are watching whether you will try harder to get a reaction. If they go quiet right after you set a boundary, they are calculating the cost of pushing past it. Each variation tells you something different about the game being run. And hey, if this is making you see silence differently right now, smash that like button and subscribe. It is the best way to help us reach more people who actually care about understanding the psychology behind everyday behavior. Point 4. The typology. Does the person go silent immediately after conflict? Silent after a specific type of conversation? Silent only around certain people? Or silent in a pattern that keeps repeating no matter how much things change between you? Each of these is telling you something completely different. Let us start with the first type. They go silent immediately after conflict. This is the most reactive form. It looks like a coping mechanism, and sometimes it genuinely is. But when it happens every single time, without resolution, without repair, it becomes a withdrawal probe. They are testing whether you will come crawling back or hold your ground. Now the second type. They go silent after specific conversations, usually the ones where you were honest, where you challenged something, or where you showed you were not easily moved. That silence is punishment, it is targeted. It follows your strength, not your weakness. What about the third type? They are silent around you but loud around everyone else. You notice it at gatherings, they talk freely, they laugh, they engage. But when you enter the space, something shifts. You become invisible. That is social exclusion used as a signal. It is telling you, without a word, exactly where you stand. And then there is the fourth type. The one most people miss entirely. They are silent in a pattern. It comes and goes. It has a rhythm. 2 weeks of warmth, then a week of distance. Then warmth again. That is the most deliberate form of all. They have learned your nervous system. They know exactly how long to stay cold before you start to pull away. And they come back just in time to keep you in the cycle. That is not emotion. That is calculation. Point 5. What it does to you. Have you ever noticed that you start speaking more carefully around someone who runs this kind of silence? You are friendlier when they are around. You second-guess things you would normally say without thinking. You check your messages twice before sending. You replay conversations looking for what you might have done wrong. That is not a coincidence. That is a behavioral shift they engineered. Epictetus wrote that it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And the silent game is built around exactly that. It is designed to hijack your reaction, to make your internal world so loud with confusion and self-doubt that you stop paying attention to what is actually happening in front of you. Researchers studying the psychology of ostracism found that targets of deliberate silence often report reduced self-esteem, a heightened need for approval, and a significant increase in self-blame. Think about that for a second. Your confidence, your sense of worth, your read on reality. All of it begins to bend around one person's refusal to speak to you. And the worst part? You might not even notice it is happening. Because the shift is gradual. It does not happen in a single moment. It happens across dozens of small moments where you chose to stay quiet, to not push, to not ask, because the silence trained you not to. Point 6. They already know your weakness. Ever had a rough week? A moment where you were already stretched thin, already doubting yourself, and noticed that the silence got heavier right at that point? That is not a coincidence. People who run the silent game are not working blindly, they are reading you. Your body language shifts when you are under pressure, your tone changes. You respond faster to messages, you look for reassurance in small ways you would not normally care about. They pick up on all of it. They do not need you to say anything. They notice the shift before you do. And here is where it gets even deeper. The longer someone uses silence as a tool around you, the more data they collect. They learn your baseline. They know what you look like when you are comfortable and secure. So when something changes, when you are less certain, less grounded, less yourself, they notice immediately. And that is exactly when the silence hits hardest. Because that is when you are most likely to reach out. Most likely to apologize. Most likely to give them exactly what they want without them having to ask for it. Studies show that targets of silent treatment often become obsessed with what they need to do to end the silence. And that obsession is the game working exactly as designed. They notice. Point 7. The reversal and payoff. What does it mean when someone who has been running this silent game suddenly comes back, warm, present, acting like nothing happened? This is what I mentioned earlier. And it is something everyone needs to understand. If someone has been cold and distant for days or weeks, and then suddenly flips back to normal, do not just accept it. Question it. People are creatures of pattern. When they break one this significant, they are trying to accomplish something. Sometimes the reason is strategic. They have pushed as far as they can push, and they need to pull you back in before you stop responding. The warmth is not a change. It is a reset button, so the cycle can start again. Other times, it is need-based. They want something from you. Attention, validation, a favor, an apology that you were never meant to give in the first place. The silence softened you up, and the return is when they collect. And sometimes, it is the most cyclical pattern of all. The silence and the return have become so rhythmic that neither of you questions it anymore. You stop seeing the game because it has become the relationship. That is the most damaging version. Because by that point, the pattern does not just live between the two of you, it lives inside you. You carry it into every relationship that follows. Seneca once wrote that it is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence. The Stoic response here is not panic, not chasing, and not explaining yourself into exhaustion. The Stoic response is to see clearly and then decide, not from fear, but from full awareness. Because that silence was never nothing to them, and it should never be nothing to you either.